I will now switch gears, and we're going from ancient Israel into India, and we'll be covering China. And so, keep in mind, right, that we saw through Mesopotamia and Egypt and Israel a relationship that we can pin down, because no matter what we make of the stories, you look at the biblical accounts, the idea at any case, whether or not the ancient Israelites really were slaves in Egypt and came out of Egypt, or whether Moses existed and was in the high court of Pharaoh at one time or not, that story does draw a link, at least conceptually, to Egypt for the ancient Israelites, right? And we do know that Egypt occupied the land of Canaan and had sometimes warfare and conflict, like in the Stele mentioned, that the first translation of the Bible, the Greek Septuagint, comes out of Egypt. And then, of course, Gilgamesh has a flood story like the Bible, and so on. So we went through all of those examples already, where Mesopotamia, Egypt, and ancient Israel, we can see certain relationships at work and relationships to the language. So we move further east, southeast. We kind of, go that way, and what we're going to see is sometimes those cultures do have relations, but we see more similarities and influences early on, especially between other cultures such as China and India. And so right now we're going to switch gears into that, and you'll see how that works. So I just have a brief clip from this really breathtaking film called Baraka, if anybody's seen that. It's from the Arabic word baraka, blessing. Okay. But here's the river Ganges in India, and this is where people think this to be a holy place. So I'm just going to play a little, not even this entire clip. I'm just going to move ahead here real quick. So, probably this isn't the best place for you to see it, but if you look, they believe that this water is holy, and hear people bathing in it, drinking it, and so on. I just thought I'd kind of just lightly put us in the mood for a different idea of things, but also show the importance of water again. Okay, and we're going to talk more about that. All right, so I'm just going to go briefly through this section on some parts. Where ancient India is similar to Mesopotamia and Egypt is that it's near a river where farming long flourished. Okay, and again, we always talk about the importance of water. Okay, it was overrun by outsiders who blended their culture of the conquered. That kind of theme comes up again, as it does with Mesopotamia as well. So in this aspect, India kind of goes through some of the similar things that we see in Mesopotamia, and then later even Egypt. And so the other aspect to understand, and I think I want to talk about geography and its influence on politics. There was a time in Brazil, where a telegram from there to Europe was quicker than being able to get in contact with people in the rainforest of Brazil. In other words, geography can really hamper things, and many reasons why, and we'll talk more about this, Latin America not being able to unify in the way the United States did is partly because of geography. So India has these huge land masses that are separated by some of the world's tallest mountains, the Himalaya and the Hindu Kush. And so it's been difficult for rulers to rule all of India. That's something that you should really think about. Afghanistan has the same kind of issue. You know, it's not just been a hard place for occupiers to control. There's rarely people in the history of Afghanistan who's been able to control all of Afghanistan, also because of geography, huge mountains, and so on. So that's led to a diversity of political fragmentation that India suffered from that is simply a geographical issue. Okay, so sometimes people look at, why is one society more stable than the other, or why do we have the United States and it's so much easier to govern than some of these other places? Are we superior? What's the issue? No, sometimes it's luck. You can get good location and diversity of resources that are not complicated in the way that other nations have to deal with. Okay, so that's just something I want you to think about. They have two great rivers there. So we know the Tigris and Euphrates, right? In the Mediterranean, in Mesopotamia, that's even talked about in the Bible. And here we have Ganges and the Indus, and it's from the Indus that comes the word Indian. Okay, so now that you know that. Okay, all right. Now this is a map of modern India, just to kind of give you some visualization. Do you see that it shares a border with China? And we see Pakistan is here, which in the past has been a part of India, and here's Afghanistan. Okay, and then here's the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. And so this should always help you. Again, maps are always helping to visualize like what is going on, what's where are we at. Okay, so moving on here. So 7,000 BCE in the Indus Valley, they see farming villages. A cosmopolitan culture with thriving cities in Indus Valley is between the 2800 to the 18th century BCE. And they had what's called the Harappan civilization. And Harappan civilization, we don't have a lot of information about, but it's one of the earliest civilizations there in the region. So what we do know is that they declined around 2000 BCE. And the Harappan society is not influenced in the same way by the Aryan civilization that's going to come up with many of the things that we think of when we think of India. Okay, so this is further back and a little more mystery here. And it's not quite clear if the environment created their civilization to decline. Was there massive sickness like a plague? Deforestation and overuse of soil. I mean, we think of environmental destruction of an area being a modern problem, but the ancients had just as much of a problem at sometimes doing that as we do now. In any case, Harappan culture is one of the first, you could say, more indigenous cultures of the region that goes further back, and that we don't have a lot of information on. So what most of us do know of, and what we think of about India, is coming of the Aryans, the Indo-European pastoral nomads. Okay, and so the Aryans moved into the Indus valleys from the west and the north. By 1500 BCE, many of them moved into northern India bringing horses and advanced weapons. What I'm going to do is actually I'll stop right here and I'll move on to the next lecture. And I will also address a little bit more about the issue of Aryans, because I'm sure you heard of that through the Nazis. And there's Aryan white supremacy groups. So what's going on here? I'll talk about a little bit about in the next lecture as well.